Be careful with trauma-borne empath loners. They don't fear your darkness. Carl Jung. They call your extreme empathy a beautiful spiritual gift. The terrifying truth? It is a slow, quiet suicide of the soul. But what happens when that broken child grows into an adult, carrying a relentless survival mechanism into a world that eagerly feeds on their lack of boundaries? Stripping the illusion. The genesis of the trauma-borne empath. Have you ever felt another person's sorrow so violently that it practically shattered your own ribs? Society loves to romanticize this agonizing bleed of boundaries. They call you an old soul, an earth angel, a gifted empath blessed with the supreme superpower of kindness and spiritual elevation. But what if I told you that this beautiful narrative is a lie? What if I told you that stripping away the poetic sugarcoating reveals a truth so raw, so terrifying, and so deeply tragic that it will change everything you know about yourself? For many of us, this profound empathy is not a divine gift bestowed by the universe. It is a bleeding scar. It is the ghostly residue of a primal survival mechanism born in the darkest corners of a terrified mind. The inner multiverse warmly welcomes you today. If you have ever felt entirely consumed by the emotional weight of the world, you are not alone. Please consider subscribing to our channel to support us in creating more deep, soul-searching journeys. And stay with me until the very end of this video, because the truth we are about to uncover will fundamentally shatter the illusion of who you thought you were. To truly comprehend the gravity of this phenomenon, we must travel back to the birthplace of all psychological architecture, your childhood. I want you to visualize a child growing up in an ecosystem entirely devoid of core safety. Imagine a home where the very people meant to be the ultimate protectors, the caregivers, were instead a source of profound emotional volatility. They might have been unpredictable, exploding in sudden, unprovoked rage, or perhaps they were emotionally vacant, freezing cold, carrying the heavy, unresolved phantoms of their own psychological traumas. In that overwhelming vulnerability, completely dependent on these giants for basic survival, the child comes to a terrifying, silent realization. The world is fundamentally dangerous, and the hands that feed them are the exact same hands that can destroy them or abandon them. You cannot fight a giant, and you cannot run away. So the psyche does the only thing it can do. It mutates to survive. Your mind is forced into a state of hyper-evolution, forging a mechanism that psychology calls hyper-attunement. You didn't just learn to read the room. You turned your entire nervous system into a hypersensitive emotional radar. Do you remember learning how to decode the exact meaning behind the subtle shift in a parent's tone of voice? How you could measure the weight of a footstep in the hallway, or the specific click of a door shutting, and instantly know if you were about to face a storm. In a fraction of a second, your terrified little mind collected and analyzed every micro-expression to answer one single life or death question. How are they feeling right now? And what exact version of myself do I need to become to keep the peace? This unconscious, agonizing empathy is not some noble act of self-sacrifice. It is a desperate emotional temperature control system for your own safety. You learn to masterfully soothe the anger of others, shrinking yourself so small that you wouldn't take up any space, effectively becoming a miniature adult tasked with holding together the shattered fragments of your own parents. You became an absolute master at reading everyone else's internal weather, but the horrifying price you paid was severing the cord to your own soul. Your nervous system became permanently trapped in an endless loop of fight, flight, and fawn. This empathy, in its rawest form, is merely a conditioned reflex of a human being suffocating in fear. The radiant, selfless empath the world praises is, in reality, the most tragic and brilliant defense mechanism a broken child could ever invent to protect their own fragile existence. But what happens when that broken child grows into an adult, carrying a relentless survival mechanism into a world that eagerly feeds on their lack of boundaries? The magnetic pull of toxicity, the adult manifestation. You step into adulthood believing you are simply a caretaker of souls, utterly unaware that your emotional radar is still scanning for threats. Because your nervous system was calibrated in chaos, peace feels profoundly uncomfortable to you. True stability feels like a trap, a quiet before an inevitable storm, leaving you in a state of excruciating suspense. Subconsciously, you crave the familiar friction of emotional turbulence because managing it is the only way you know how to prove your worth and ensure your safety. This is why you do not just attract toxic, narcissistic, or deeply wounded people. You are magnetically, irresistibly drawn to them. When you meet someone who is emotionally unavailable, volatile, or fractured, your trauma brain lights up like a beacon. It whispers a dangerous lie. If I can heal them, if I can love them enough to fix their broken pieces, I will finally be safe. In your romantic relationships, friendships, and even your career, you become the ultimate emotional chameleon. You seamlessly morph into whatever the other person needs you to be, absorbing their subtle shifts in mood before they even process it themselves. If your partner comes home carrying the heavy residue of a bad day, you do not just observe their anger, you physically ingest it. Your chest tightens, your breathing turns shallow, and you immediately begin contorting yourself to neutralize their distress. You walk on eggshells, meticulously managing their environment, entirely convinced that their bad mood is your personal failure. You mistake this profound anxiety for chemistry, confusing the adrenaline spike of trauma bonding with the passion of true love. People marvel at your endless capacity to forgive, calling you a saint, but this forgiveness is not rooted in grace. It is rooted in terror. The thought of setting a firm boundary, of looking someone in the eye and saying no, triggers a primal fear of abandonment so severe it feels like physical annihilation. You have been conditioned to believe that your only currency in the human marketplace is your usefulness. If you are not soothing, fixing, or rescuing someone, what reason would anyone have to stay with you? So, you bleed yourself dry. You allow energy vampires to latch onto your empathy, siphoning your life force while you desperately try to fill their bottomless voids. You convince yourself that you are performing an act of supreme spiritual nobility, but in the deepest, quietest chambers of your mind, you are just a terrified child, desperately trying to earn the right to exist in the presence of others. You are playing out a haunting repetition compulsion, trying to win the love of the parents who failed you by saving the partners who destroy you. Yet, this endless cycle of rescuing and absorbing the darkness of others exacts a devastating, invisible toll on the physical and spiritual body, the hollow vessel, the price of carrying the world. There is a specific bone-deep exhaustion that accompanies the life of a trauma-borne empath, a profound fatigue that no amount of sleep can ever cure. You wake up already drained, carrying an invisible backpack filled with the grief, anxiety, and neuroses of everyone you interacted with the day before. Your body, forced to constantly process foreign emotional toxins, begins to break down under the unrelenting pressure. You experience mysterious migraines, chronic digestive issues, and an immune system that feels constantly under siege. This is not a mystical spiritual crisis. This is the biological reality of a nervous system that has been stuck in overdrive for decades. Your body is screaming the word no because your mouth refuses to say it. The tragedy of living as a human sponge is that you eventually lose track of where other people end and where you begin. When you are constantly flooded by the emotional frequencies of the external world, your internal voice is drowned out entirely. If someone were to sit you down right now, look past your defenses, and ask you a strikingly simple question, what do you want? Your mind would likely go completely blank. You know exactly what your partner wants. You know what your boss expects. You know what your parents demand. But your own desires, your own passions, your own innate identity, they have been starved to death in the dark. You have spent your entire life studying the internal landscapes of others, while your own soul became a barren, abandoned wasteland. This creates a terrifying paradox. You are surrounded by people who claim to love you, people who constantly rely on your endless well of support, yet you have never felt more profoundly alone. They do not love you. They love the utility of you. They love the version of you that requires nothing, asks for nothing, and gives everything. The moment you are alone in a quiet room, stripped of the distractions of fixing others, a suffocating emptiness creeps in. The silence is deafening because it forces you to confront the devastating reality of your self-abandonment. You realize that you have built a life completely around the needs of others, leaving absolutely no room for yourself. You are merely a mirror, reflecting the world back to itself. But behind the glass, there is nobody home. You feel like a ghost haunting your own existence, watching a stranger live a life that was supposed to be yours. This profound loss of self is the ultimate price of unchecked empathy. It is a slow, quiet suicide of the soul, executed over thousands of tiny compromises. Eventually, the hollow vessel cracks, and through those jagged fractures, a terrifying but necessary revelation begins to seep into the light. The shattering, the awakening of the suppressed self. There comes a definitive moment in the life of every trauma-borne empath, a breaking point where the architecture of your survival mechanism simply collapses. It usually happens after a profound betrayal, a brutal discard by a narcissist you tried to save, or a sudden, catastrophic burnout that leaves you entirely paralyzed. In this agonizing collapse, the protective illusion shatters. The romanticized identity of the healer falls away, leaving you naked in front of the mirror, staring at the absolute wreckage of your life. This is the dark night of the soul. It is a violent, terrifying initiation into consciousness where you are forced to confront the unbearable truth. Your supreme kindness was, in fact, a chronic state of self-betrayal. You were not being the bigger person. You were participating in your own abuse. When this realization hits, the first emotion that floods your system is not peace. It is a primal, volcanic rage. For years, you have suppressed your anger, viewing it as an ugly, unspiritual emotion that would make you unlovable. But suddenly, the dam breaks. You are enraged at the people who exploited your kindness. You are furious at the parents who planted the seeds of your unworthiness. But most devastatingly, you are angry at yourself. You are furious at every time you swallowed your voice, every time you smiled while being disrespected, every time you said it's okay when it was absolutely not okay. This rage is not toxic, it is sacred. It is the life force returning to your body, the fiery guardian of your boundaries finally waking from its long slumber. Following the rage comes an ocean of grief. You must sit in the ruins of your own heart and weep for the child who never got to be a child. You mourn the little boy or girl who had to stand on their tiptoes, acting as an emotional shield for the broken adults in their life. You grieve for the years you lost to relationships that were doomed from the start, and for the dreams you abandoned to keep other people comfortable. It is a lonely, agonizing process because the people in your life will fiercely resist this awakening. When you stop playing the designated shock absorber, when you stop fixing their messes, they will call you selfish. They will accuse you of changing. And the guilt, the sheer suffocating guilt of prioritizing yourself, will threaten to pull you back into the familiar comfort of submission. But you cannot go back. The illusion is dead. You finally understand that true empathy cannot exist without self-respect. It is within the smoldering ashes of this shattered identity that the true work of alchemy begins, demanding a terrifying leap into the unknown territory of self-preservation. The reclamation, forging the conscious empath. Healing from trauma-borne empathy does not mean turning your heart into stone. The goal is not to become cold, callous, or devoid of compassion. The profound sensitivity you possess is still beautiful. It was simply hijacked by fear. The true journey of reclamation is about transforming this hypervigilant survival tactic into conscious, deliberate empathy. It requires you to build what you have lacked your entire life, an impenetrable psychological immune system. You must become the fierce architect of your own boundaries. A boundary is not a wall to keep the world out. It is a door with a lock, and you are the only one who holds the key. You learn the terrifying, liberating power of the word no. You practice saying it without justification, without a softening apology, and you learn to sit quietly in the agonizing discomfort of the other person's disappointment. This requires a radical reparenting of your inner child. When the familiar panic sets in, when someone shifts their tone and your nervous system screams at you to immediately fix it, you have to pause. You must place a hand over your own heart and silently remind yourself, I am safe. Their emotion is not my responsibility. I do not have to abandon myself to keep them. Slowly, you begin to return to your physical body. You start to listen to its subtle cues. When your stomach tightens around certain people, you no longer ignore it in the name of politeness. You honor it as profound, ancient wisdom. You stop analyzing the motives of toxic people and start walking away from them. You realize that you cannot heal anyone who does not want to heal themselves, and that your energy is a finite, sacred currency that must be fiercely protected. As you integrate this profound shift, the nature of your empathy changes. You no longer absorb the pain of others. You observe it with deep compassion, standing securely on the shoreline rather than drowning in the ocean alongside them. You can hold space for a friend's sorrow without letting it ruin your own day. You discover that when you stop draining yourself for the wrong people, a tremendous reservoir of energy becomes available to you. You finally have the emotional capital to ask the question that once terrified you: who am I, and what do I want to create in this world? You begin to discover your own passions, your own voice, and your own unshakable worth. You are no longer the tragic victim of your own sensitivity. You are a conscious empath, rooted in deep self-love, aware of your power, and beautifully, defiantly whole. You have finally broken the ancestral chain of emotional servitude. The world will no longer dictate your internal weather, because for the first time in your entire life, you are the master of your own soul. The trauma was the crucible, but the strength you forged within it is yours to keep forever. And finally, conclusion. In essence, the journey of a trauma-borne empath is a profound evolution from survival to sovereignty. For years, you operated under the tragic illusion that your worth was entirely dependent on your ability to absorb, manage, and heal the pain of others. Born from childhood chaos, your empathy was not initially a gift, but a hypervigilant defense mechanism, a desperate attempt to create safety by chronically abandoning yourself. This relentless cycle of people-pleasing and emotional servitude inevitably led to physical exhaustion, spiritual bankruptcy, and the terrifying realization that you had become a ghost in your own life. However, the inevitable collapse of this fragile survival strategy is not a punishment. It is a profound awakening. The shattering of your self-sacrificing identity makes way for sacred rage and necessary grief, ultimately burning away the toxic conditioning of your past. Healing does not ask you to destroy your sensitive nature, but rather to protect it with impenetrable boundaries. By learning the liberating power of the word no and radically reparenting your wounded inner child, you transform your empathy from a vulnerability into your greatest strength. You stop absorbing the world's darkness and start holding space with grounded, detached compassion. Ultimately, this journey is about reclaiming your absolute right to exist for yourself. You emerge from the crucible not as a hollow vessel for others, but as a conscious, empowered architect of your own destiny, forever breaking the chain of emotional servitude. Profound lesson. True empathy cannot exist without self-respect. When empathy lacks firm boundaries, it is no longer compassion. It is self-betrayal and participation in your own abuse. You cannot save others by destroying yourself, and your fundamental worth is never defined by your usefulness to broken people. Your sensitivity is a magnificent gift, but it requires a fiercely guarded psychological immune system to thrive. How to apply it to your life right now. The pause protocol. When someone around you shifts into a negative, angry, or demanding mood, do not rush to fix it. Take a deep breath, place a hand over your heart, and silently remind yourself, their emotional state is not my responsibility. I am safe. Practice the unapologetic no. Start saying no to small, draining requests without offering a lengthy explanation, justification, or softening apology. Allow the other person to be disappointed, and practice sitting quietly in that momentary discomfort without caving in. Honor your somatic cues. Pay attention to how your physical body reacts to specific people. If your stomach knots up, your chest tightens, or you feel instantly drained after an interaction, treat that physical reaction as absolute truth. Begin limiting your availability to those who drain your finite, sacred energy. A question for you. What is one specific boundary you know you need to set in your life right now to protect your peace? Please take a moment to share your thoughts in the comment section below. We would love to read your perspective, and your personal experience might be the exact inspiration someone else needs to see today to begin their own healing journey. If this message resonated with you, please subscribe to our channel. Your support means the world to us and gives us the motivation to keep creating more deep, meaningful content just like this.